Hello. So we are here today at the beautiful La Galerie Dior in Paris. My name is Sabrina Mentor. I am co-founder and a board member of the Unlocked Foundation. I am joined here today by Jamie Mittelmen, CEO and founder of Flame Bearers, the world's first media and content company dedicated to celebrating the stories of the best female athletes. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you for having me, Sabrina. I'm really excited to be here.
Wonderful. So the Paris 2024 Olympics marks a new era for women in sports. There are several factors that have led to the growing interest for visibility for women in sports, from the explosion of media coverage in the USA NCAA Women's Basketball Championship, where close to 19 million fans watched. We're here today to discuss the 2024 Olympic female trailblazers who are breaking new ground in their respective sports, whether they're making their Olympic debuts or they're coming back for redemption. But first, let's take a look at some of their inspiring stories.
One day, we won't need this day. We won't need a day to celebrate how far we've come. We won't need a day to prove we're just as fast or strong or skilled. We won't need a day to relive the comebacks, the firsts, or the titles we've won. We won't need a day to rally behind the ones fighting to change the rules. One day, we won't need this day at all, because one day, this day, will be our everyday.
I have goosebumps.
Exactly. And it's powerful to see messaging like that being displayed. It's really, really good for our female youth, for our women, for everyone.
Thank you for having me here today. I am so honored and so excited to be a part of this conversation. And thank you to WomanX for making this connection even possible. So if we take a look back, 1900 was the first year that women were even able to compete in the Olympics. And we could only compete in 6 sports, and those were the sports that were considered feminine. So societally, we are seeing a massive cultural shift.
And that's amazing.
And that is amazing, and it is about time.
Yes, it is.
Number 2, the infrastructure is completely changing. Until last year, the most widely cited statistic was less than 3.2% of sports media coverage went to women and girls. We're now up to 15%.
Woo!
So that still means that 85% of sports media coverage, which frankly, I think is a misnomer. It's male sports coverage if 85% of it goes to men. We are now seeing a typhoon of people saying, I can see this, so I want to be a fan. It's hard to be a fan of something if you're not able to tune into the game. So now that we're seeing coverage like NBC putting women on primetime, we're seeing the fan base actually develop.
Now, who are your top women to watch in the 2024 Olympic Games and why? Let's start with some emerging breakout stars.
Let's start with the standout stars who everyone knows. Simone Biles, coming in after she has 4 Olympic gold medals, 7 Olympic medals, 20 up to 30 world medals.
Woo!
Absolutely. I think that her return at the age of 27, which is unheard of for gymnasts, by the way, side note. So there's this whole backstory of her coming back, but as she says, she's not back, she is better. So this is a story of resilience, of grit, of personal strength, of overcoming tragedy.
Love.
One of the, I'd say, more interesting stories that I think people should keep an eye out is for the U.S. women's national soccer team.
Okay.
So out of the World Cup, they were kicked out in the round of 16. They have a brand new coach, Emma Hayes, and she's largely untested. So I think coming into this Olympics, a lot of people are going to be watching this team to see how they actually compete. At the same time, one thing that I like to call out about Katie is she is an incredibly positive influence on kids. So she goes out of her way to spend time with children with diseases who look up to her. She has done multiple partnerships with organizations where they say, I want to get to know Katie. And she goes out of her way to make that wish come true.
Oh, touching.
And what I love about that is so rarely do we get the opportunity to meet these athletes as people. We see them just as performers. They are out on the track, they're in the pool, they're on the court, and we don't really get to see what makes them tick, who they are, what they care about. One athlete who is not here, but I think is important to name, and I saw you included her in this promo video, is Caster Semenya.
Yes.
So I've had the opportunity to work and interview with Caster couple different times. Essentially, for those who don't know, Caster is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 3-time world champion. She was born with naturally high testosterone levels, did nothing to change her body, and essentially has been barred from competing in her natural body.
Which female athletes' compelling personal stories or backgrounds make their participation in the 2024 Olympics particularly inspiring, in addition to the athlete you just mentioned?
Okay, I have 2 for you here.
Yes.
This is my bread and butter.
I love it.
Marine Fatoumata Kamara. She is Mali's first ever female Olympic boxer.
Nice.
So Marine has been on this journey for decades. I had the opportunity to interview her before she qualified, and we sat down after she qualified, and what this qualification means to her, to her country, to representation for little girls and boys from Mali who never thought of themselves as having that path forward.
Yes.
She is breaking down doors and basically is the female representation of empowerment. So Team Marine all the way. Woo! Definitely check her out. Another athlete that I would recommend is Massima Alizada from Afghanistan. So first of all, a lot of people are not familiar with the fact that there is an Olympic refugee team. So what this is an Olympic cohort of athletes from war-torn countries. This came about in 2016 during the refugee crisis.
Okay.
Now, what's so incredible about Massima's story is she grew up in Afghanistan. She dressed up as a man to go out on her bike because growing up in Kabul, women were not allowed to bike ride. But number 2, Massima has used her platform, has used this opportunity to shed light on the condition of women in Afghanistan. Under Taliban rule, the restrictions that are currently being faced for them.
Incredibly important, not just for her to share it for her own spirit, but for others to witness it so they can really digest it and understand what some of these athletes have to endure just to compete.
And it's so interesting you said that. So Marine, the Malian boxer, she's also on the French national team. And she told me, frequently, people tell me it's a cop-out. It is easier to compete for Mali than it is for France. So shout out to all the incredible trailblazers who are literally building it from day one.
Absolutely. The Unlocked Foundation has a mission of empowering women to close the wealth gap. Which female athletes are known for their advocacy and activism around pay equity for women? And how does their participation in the Olympic Games amplify their message?
The U.S. women's national soccer team, I think, is the team that has had the most coverage around this. So in particular, Becky Sauerbrunn, the former captain of the team, who I had the opportunity to work with, led a pay equity lawsuit to basically demand equal pay for her team. A couple other individuals, Raven Saunders last year, she is an American track and field athlete. She was well known for having the photo. It's basically an ex when she was receiving her medal.
Now, regarding pay equity, have you seen an increase in the opportunities for the 2024 female Olympians in terms of endorsements and sponsorships?
Basically, if we were to take a step back, women's sponsorship in the United States has increased 22% in the last year. We're also seeing the demand spike. We're seeing 50% of people who are tuning in saying, I learned about women's sports and really got engaged in the last 1 to 3 years. So if I'm an investor, if I'm a sponsor, that's an alarm bell. That's saying, opportunity, come invest in me. And brands are now responding. And that's part of what we do in terms of elevating all sports, all abilities, all backgrounds, specifically in the context of the United States, basketball, soccer, hockey. Those are the top 3.
How are female Olympians creatively leveraging or able to leverage this visibility during the Olympics to enhance their potential financial opportunities?
One athlete that I just need to give a shout out to is Allison Felix.
Okay.
So Allison is not competing in this Olympics. She's actually the most decorated track and field athlete in U.S. history.
Okay.
She walked away from a Nike deal when they threatened to cut her pay by 70% after she had her child. Now, what Allison is doing, she actually opened up a nursery in the Olympic Village. And what she's saying is, no, the two can go hand in hand. And what's interesting about this is sponsored by Pampers. So she created a paid opportunity out of something that didn't exist before.
It's amazing.
And this is a woman who came up with a creative solution that no one in the past has done. And I think that's largely because she's in a position of power now. So you put the women in the power seats, let them make the decisions, and change happens.
Now, how can Olympians use their platform to enhance their financial opportunities to serve as a model to other working women?
I think it's such an incredible question because with the proliferation of social media, we're seeing athletes develop their personal brands in ways that previous generations were not really able to tap into.
Okay.
So for example, I had the opportunity to work with Michelle Akers. Michelle is considered the greatest of all time soccer player. She had one shoe endorsement. Social media was not around when she was here.
Right.
So she has about 15,000 followers. You look at a player on the U.S. women's national team today who barely plays. She has at least 15,000 followers. And the reason that matters is because brands are interested in followership.
Right.
So what I would say for women who are trying to build their own business is to really develop your personal brand. Stand behind it. Post about who you are, what makes you different, because at the end of the day, that's your differentiator. So this is the first year ever when we're going to see equal coverage of male and women on television. Yes. I think they also mentioned this before, first games in history with equal number of athletes, male and women. Also, from a diversity perspective, they're no longer just white, able-bodied individuals from the United States who play soccer, basketball, or hockey. We're seeing athletes like Nikki Nieves, who's a sitting volleyball player. That's the Paralympic equivalent of volleyball being sponsored. So it's fantastic to see this change in sponsorship.
Let's see here now. I would love to plug Flame Bearers. For those seeking to closely follow the stories of women and Olympians, where can they access your content?
So flamebearers.com. We are on all podcasting platforms. So that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Watch our interviews on YouTube, and we're on every social media platform. The reason we do this work is because so often you see an athlete competing, but you don't know who she actually is. I threw out the stat of 15%. In order to get people to tune into women's sports, we want to know who these women are. So hear the stories and then tune in to know who you're actually cheering for.
Fantastic. Jamie, thank you so much for the good work that you're doing. This is important. It's really powerful work, and I appreciate you just taking the time to come on today and discuss this with us, with our members, so that we can place the spotlight where it needs to be.
Well, thank you for having me. I love what your organization does.
Absolutely. My pleasure, dear. Thank you.